Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. I'm Rudy Trevino.
And I'm Barbie Leo, and as we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month here at 3 News, we are proud to serve and represent the demographic that is South Texas, el sur de Texas.
That's right. It is under the banner of Latino, and being Latino Hispanic Heritage Month, we celebrate all of them. And a big part of this culture is, of course, our language.
And some of us are fortunate enough to grow up in a bilingual home with parents, grandparents, and even great-grandparents for some.
And as we get started, we want to highlight something that may not be commonly known. And this does not come as a surprise to any of our guests who you'll meet in just a moment. The shame that some generations have been made to feel about their language. The later generations, I'm talking about back in the 50s and 60s, who were told not to speak Spanish and instead adopt English as their primary language. So during the next 30 minutes, we're going to be focusing in on the assimilation, if you will, that may, some believe, diluted our native cultural language because we are in some instance known as Native Americans because we are Native Americans. We were here before Texas was part of the United States.
And with that, we're going to introduce our guests. We have the beautiful and talented artist, singer, songwriter Monique Martinez, granddaughter of the famed recording artist, Mr. Freddie Martinez. We also have Joey Gonzalez, local artist and LGBTQ+ activist.
That's right. We have Mrs. Monica Jimenez. She's a teacher of dual language program over at Tolosa Midway. We also have our special guest, Dr. Mara Barbosa. She's the Associate Professor of Spanish Linguistics over at Texas A&M University Corpus Christi here in our own hometown.
And of course, Mark Gonzalez from 3 News, director and editor for director for Domingo Live for many years, about 18 years.
He mentioned 18
about
years.
18 years.
Okay, very
Yes.
cool. So, getting started with this portion of our discussion. To our roots, let's start right there. As a group, we start with, how did you grow up? Give us a little insight. Let's start over here on this side.
Well, I grew up in a primarily English-speaking family, but with my family being in the music business, the Tejano business, I heard a lot of Spanish as well. My parents spoke Spanish around me, my grandparents spoke Spanish around me, and I definitely grew up understanding it, but I think I also took it for granted a bit. I'd be like, oh, I'll just learn when I'm older, and now that I'm older, I wish I knew more, and I'm in the process of learning it, so yeah, but a primarily English-speaking family.
Okay. What about you?
Yeah, I would say my experience is very similar to Monique's. I think my difference is that instead of the music industry, we had Domingo Live and listening to Tejano music every Sunday morning. We had, barbacoa and tortillas every morning, that Sunday morning. So it was pretty nice growing up in that household. But, as I got older, I didn't really practice Spanish, and so you lose it, but now in the process of relearning it, my in-laws are Spanish speaking only, so there's a little bit of a barrier to communicate, but trying to get into that, trying to learn it. Yeah.
Mrs. Jimenez, you are a dual language teacher over at Tolosa Midway. But did you grow up speaking Spanish in your household when you were growing up as a child?
Rudy, in my household, I spoke English, but I would stay with my grandparents in Mathis, Texas, so I was encouraged to learn Spanish. My grandfather said, si quieres hablar conmigo, tienes que hablar español. So I was on board, and I grew up watching novelas, Sábado Gigante, and I just bloomed from there.
Now, besides going and visiting your grandmother and staying with your grandmother and learning from her, how else have you kept up with the Spanish language since you were little to now?
I've always practiced it. I have Spanish speaking friends. My husband speaks Spanish. We all speak Spanish, so it's normal now. I just speak Spanish.
And Dr. Barbosa, you at the university, of course, language is your job and what you do. You have a passion. You're not a Native American. Give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, I have the least interesting childhood here. I was born in Brazil and raised completely monolingual. It was only when I was 16, 17 that I started learning Spanish and English. And although it may sound like my experience is like too different, but it's a good comparison because as when I came here, I learned that Spanish here was not prestigious, and that sounded crazy for me because in Brazil it's very prestigious to speak Spanish, and that's why one of the reasons I dedicate my work life to my students and to helping them keeping their language alive and as a resource for them.
Being here in South Texas,
Yes.
coming from Brazil, being a professor, what else besides that? What else have you learned about South Texas and the Spanish speakers here?
I was not ready for this. I was not expecting this at all because I went to grad school in Indiana at Purdue University, and very different population, right? So when I got here and I saw basically all my students speaking Spanish, I got so excited. At the same time that they would come to me and say in Spanish, "Professor, I don't speak Spanish." Right? So I was not ready for that. I was not ready for the ideologies I encountered here. I was not ready to deal with this ideology that your Spanish is not good enough, so just abandon it and focus on English that is going to be more successful, right? But because that's also my area of expertise, I had a lot of material to work with.
Sure, isn't that wonderful to be able
Yes.
to have that material? But sadly, it speaks volumes about the population and the makeup of the cultural divide that we face. But speaking of that divide, we go back now to the 50s, 60s, where the attitude was different. And Mark Gonzalez, our director here, tells a story about what his parents encountered when they were going to school. Tell me about that.
Both my mother and father have always been born and raised kind of in the Kings Village, Falfurrias, 281 area. And even though like they were the majority, they'd go to school and all of a sudden it was like my mother's hand was slapped for using her left hand, right? And then my father, I know he's had multiple times where he was basically called names for speaking Spanish. And I'm pretty sure the same with my mother. She's just not as open with the stories, you know, but I know she had to go to school and they're like, "What are y'all doing?" And it was her whole family. She had a big family of like 7. So they would make them speak English, like only. And almost everybody in the town, when you went out, you had to speak English because if not, they were just like, "Oh," you know. And even though it was like they were the majority population, they weren't like accepted to speak their own Spanish. Like to my mom at one point, she said it almost felt like they thought we were telling secrets, you know, when every time we'd speak Spanish. So that's their coming up. So when I was born, they still spoke pretty much Spanish. My grandmother spoke Spanish, my aunts and uncles spoke Spanish, but then when it came to me, they made very sure, like, "Hey, you know, you need to speak this, and you need to enunciate this." And there's still times where little things pop out just because I was raised. And you talk about the shame, even from my generation, was more of being like in high school or middle school and saying the word, the CH with an SH. So share. Sometimes it still comes out. I need to go get the share. You know, occasionally you'll still hear me say, "I need to go to HEB." You know, and that's not because, it's because like, it's just what I always heard. So that's what I thought it was. So it's almost like there was more shame from some of my own people about saying those things than there was from other people. So that was me coming up.
And growing up in that shame, Mark, and then being a part of Domingo Live, which is a South Texas staple and tradition, predominantly Spanish speakers, bilingual, we embrace the culture, we embrace the language. How did that make you feel?
As a kid, my parents used to always take me to the mall, the old Sunrise, to go watch Domingo. There was a point in my own life where I remember I wanted to listen to like the radio, and I wanted to listen to pop music. I was little. And I was like, "Dad, I'm tired of listening to Spanish music." and he goes, "Hey, this is your culture. This is what you come from. This is what you need to also learn." And then after that, I had a kind of little, like, mental switch that kind of goes like, it's not that bad.
All of a sudden, I think I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, in the home, Freddie Martinez was always being played. Anything Bernal,
Oh, yeah.
Tony De La Rosa. Those are like the constants inside my home.
Sure.
But my dad was also very eclectic. So he had like B.B. King he loved. He liked the Doors a little bit. He liked just all kinds of music. But it was always the base of Latin music.
And it's a wonderful segue that brings us into another point that again stands out. In the movie Selena, there is a segment where the actor, James Edward Olmos, is portraying Mr. Abraham Quintanilla, where he says, we have to be better than the American side and even better than the Mexican side because we're either too Mexican or not American enough. And so he makes that comparison. And I direct this question to you, Dr. Barbosa, because you've done research on this topic before. Can you explain the thoughts of the overall feeling of shame when it comes to knowing Spanish, but not knowing it good enough to where Tejanos have developed their own sort of language using Spanglish that we all know?
Yeah, and it's not a sort of language, it's a language. There is no other way to put it. It's interesting. I like this question because it's something that I dedicate a lot of time with my students. We go over the notions of language. What is a language? And then we go over the idea that there is nothing intrinsic to a language that makes it inferior or superior to others. It's all socially constructed. That each language, it doesn't matter if we consider it a dialect, a variety, a language, it doesn't matter how we consider it socially. It's a language that has internal rules and internal structure, and every speaker unconsciously follow those rules of the language unconsciously. And then after 5 weeks learning that and discussing that, I ask, so is Tex-Mex a language? They will go like, well, it deviates a lot from Spanish, right? So it's not, it's inferior. It's not worthy of being called a language. And again, there is nothing intrinsic to Spanish or to Tex-Mex that will make it inferior to English, for example. It's how we constructed it. It's these ideologies that we learn and unfortunately reinforce. We reinforce it all the time. We have reinforced it at school. We reinforce it when we say, I'm not going to hire this person because he has a strong accent or because he doesn't speak right, he speaks mucho, right? And we are reinforcing these ideologies. And then when students get to college that like have this amazing opportunity to break this ideology, it's a lot of work.
So what you're saying here is that it's okay to embrace the Tex-Mex dialect. It is a unique dialect, much like when you go to the southern states in Alabama, North Carolina, and Tennessee, where they do speak English, but it's a little different.
It's just different. And between all these differences, all these different Englishes, for example, who decides which one is the correct one? It's not a matter of language. It's not a linguistic problem. It's a matter of power.
That's right.
Right? There is a group that has more power and it's deciding which English is better and that we should speak English in certain ways. It's the appropriateness of language. And we should work against it.
And Dr. Barbosa, don't you think it is up to the people to decide this is how we're speaking, this is how we communicate, is our language? Going back to the Tex-Mex and the Spanglish, you know, I hear mapear. You're bringing that English dialect to mopping and, you know, parquear. It's parking. You know, it's they understand each other, so it is their language.
And this phenomenon you are referring to, the mapear, parquear, those are natural phenomena. They happen. There is no way we are going to stop it, right? All languages evolve, and they evolve according to their context. In the case of Tex-Mex or Spanglish or however people want to put it, it's language in contact. It has these natural processes that no one can stop. And it represents who their speakers are. It represents their identity. So it can be stopped, and it should not be tried to be stopped.
So your message for those that are watching and feel, maybe shy about speaking, or maybe that they're going to say something wrong, like Mark mentioned, or, they feel maybe this language that I'm speaking is not important. It's not an educated type of language. Your message to them?
That languages change, and there is nothing intrinsic to a language that makes it inferior or superior to other languages. And we need to accept that. And when we decide, okay, I'm not gonna speak English here because I'm not gonna speak Spanish here, or Tex-Mex here because I'm gonna be misinterpreted, well, it's your choice, right? But you are still emphasizing, you're still reproducing this ideology of appropriateness of language, which I believe we should not be doing. We need to stop saying that our language, our identity, because after all, language is identity, is not appropriate for certain contexts.
Which brings me to the next question, to Mrs. Jimenez, our teacher from Tolosa Midway. And I could say that easily the tables have now turned when it comes to education. And our native South Texans, many of those who are non-Hispanics, are now seeking out that their children, who are non-Hispanic, learn the language. Have you encountered that in your classrooms?
Yes, sir. Yes. We have a lot of parents who are interested in having their children learn Spanish.
Do they say why? Why are they interested in their children, to learn a language?
I think they have said that it would make their child more marketable. Learning two languages is always a plus, more than just English. It doesn't have to be just Spanish, it could be any other language. It's always a plus. And I think that there's a strong interest right now since we have started the dual language program at Tolosa Midway.
How did it start?
We looked at our data and we saw that our bilingual students were not meeting the standards. And so the best way to teach our students is to teach them in their native language. And the non-English speakers are also benefiting from learning Spanish. So both of them together is an infusion, and it has been amazing.
Isn't it interesting that, when we were talking to Mark, he mentioned, growing up, it was a no-no, don't speak Spanish. And now they're asking for their children to learn the language. We've come a long way.
We certainly have, but there's still such a long way to go. What would you say has helped define this program at Tolosa Midway?
I believe the need to also embrace our native language speakers, their culture, and to continue in positive practices, ways to embrace their language at home and at school, and to be globally marketable.
For a child, or for anyone that wants to learn more Spanish, we're in South Texas, we're in Corpus Christi, we're not close to the border, like a border town of, when my family is from the valley. So I grew up hearing Spanish all the time, no matter where I went. Here, we don't see that. So how can we teach our children, how can the people that want to learn Spanish properly and as quickly as possible? Should we just watch the novelas all day long? What is your advice? What can we do?
Enroll them at Tolosa Midway. First of all. Yes, we are doing our absolutely the most best to help our children learn English and Spanish in our classrooms, and I think that is a really good start, because this is it's just not kinder, it's going to follow them through the rest of their lives.
So let me ask the young people here in our panel.
And me too.
And is it spoken among your friends when you're out and about, when you're out having a good time, when you're out shopping? Is Spanish brought up, or is it done mostly in English, your gatherings?
For my friend group, I think that it's spoken about, but it's never spoken. And so there's a very clear disconnect between people that know Spanish and the ones that, we're talking about generational, this generational divide among Spanish speakers and non-Spanish speakers. And so like for myself, I would say that like, yeah, I grew up not knowing Spanish, having Spanish-speaking cousins, you know, and so they would make jokes about me, right? And I couldn't understand them, but I would like laugh along because what else can you do, right? But you know, now that I'm older, I'm like, I want to know those jokes. What were they saying?
So you can go back and say, I don't even know what you told me
Yeah,
a long time ago.
yeah, and you know, like my music taste is a lot different. Still listen to corridos, and so a lot of my friends also listen to Spanish music. We like to, you know, listen to Grupo Frontera or Bad Bunny, and like can't understand what they're saying unless you know Spanish. And so, yeah, trying to. I think that has been like the main driving force is to like try and connect deeper with the language. That way I can also connect deeper to the culture.
So with the music, with the Bad Bunny and Frontera, if you're not really familiar or understand what they're saying, what attracts you to their music?
Oh no.
Oh,
Now
I thought you
do.
meant for you. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
now I do. Now I do. But before, like a couple of years ago, like when Grupo Frontera was like just on the scene in the valley still, right? I didn't know what they were saying. I was like, oh my God, love you so much.
What did you love about them at that time when you didn't understand what they were saying?
Yeah, I've always liked the corridos of Ramon Ayala, Grupo Solido, or Grupo Límite. And so like hearing the Orselina, you know, or Freddie Martinez. And so, you know, just listening to this Spanish music at that time just reminded me of my childhood. And so I'm like, yes, now I can listen to it, now understand it, and I'm like, wow, that it's like bridging my childhood and my older self.
Sure.
What about you, Monique?
I completely agree. I think in my friend group, we primarily speak English, and we talk about, you know, wanting to learn more Spanish, but again, it's not spoken. And there does seem to be kind of like a disconnect there, and I do think maybe it's generational, I don't know, but it is funny how it does kind of show how far we've come, because now we're really seeking out to learn more, but there is still a further way to go. But I think part of me does feel shame for not knowing my language, and you know, I do feel like it has not hindered me in a way, but I feel like people come to me and just expect me to know this language, and but I don't. And I understand, I can understand, but I can't speak it. But I remember I was telling Barbie earlier, I think it's because I'm shy about it, and I don't want to mess up, and I don't want to trip over my words. But that's how you learn, and that's part of my journey of being a Hispanic woman, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of my culture.
And Monique, you being part of, and we need to remind everyone, she is part of the Freddie Martinez recording industry dynasty. Who has dealt with some of the biggest artists in not only Tejano, but regional Mexican and so many other Latin formats of music. Did any of that rub off on you if you may have been in the studio with some of the biggest artists recorded, and did you understand what they were saying?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I grew up listening to all Tejano, and of course I also listened to other music as well, like classic rock and all this stuff, but I always heard Tejano. And I think, going back to what I said earlier, I think I just took it for granted. I think I was just around it so much, and I would kind of understand it, but I was like, oh, like it's okay, it's fine, I'll learn it later. But now being an adult, I'm like, wow, like this language, it is so beautiful, and it's part of my culture. It's part of who I am. And I love that I'm part of that. And yeah, it definitely rubbed off on me, absolutely.
We know that you're an artist, you sing amazing, you know, songs that you write yourself. My daughter knows all of them by heart, by the way. Her biggest fan. Did you ever, you know, want to sing in Spanish, or do you want to, record a Spanish song?
Yeah, I'm actually in the process of writing a Spanish song right now. And I actually wrote it in English first, but kind of learning how to translate it has been a really interesting journey, and how the words, like doesn't translate exactly over, so you have to kind of tweak stuff, but that's been part of my learning process, and I think really immersing myself into, well, not only hearing people speak it, but also allowing myself to have those mistakes and not be so shy about it. is what's making me become more confident in my Spanish speaking journey, I guess.
And that's beautiful.
Looking forward to
Absolutely
that.
beautiful.
And you need to think
Nice to
about it
hear.
as not a translation, but an interpretation
Yes.
of what you're trying to say, because you can't Google search it and translate it.
Yeah.
It's not going to make sense. But
Yeah.
you know, interpret it on what you want to say, but in Spanish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Looking forward to that.
Which brings us back to Mark here and his tenure at 3 News, and of course directing the Domingo Live show. How has it been for you throughout the years that I've known you, 22 now, in my case where I've been here? You have directed some interesting bands, and you've had to do the mic checks and figure out what they're playing, the instrumentation, when the singer starts. How difficult has that been growing up the way you did, speaking English, knowing a little bit of Spanish, but then knowing the music is a whole different animal, knowing what they're saying and when they're going to sing it or play a riff, for example?
Right. That comes from a little bit of like just the musical training more than the Spanish. The Spanish helps, like knowing some, because I didn't learn it until I was already working here. Then I finally started properly learning Spanish. You know, I was already in college. Okay, so that's when I really started learning how to, like, basically speak it as well. But like my accent is never going to be there. Like I can roll an R, but there's still things that don't sound right. But over the years, we've just seen like these bands evolve, like different instruments, different from all like the earliest I remember, there was just keyboards everywhere, constant keyboards.
Yes.
And then there was just, and then everybody had actual instruments for a little bit again, because that was from before as well, because my dad loved Latin Breed. Latin Breed was one of his favorites. So I always remember hearing like to me that was like the lack of a better phrase, the Mexican Chicago. So and then we kind of went to a smaller, like kind of the 3-piece for a bit as we were watching, and then they kind of went back to a 4, and that's kind of where we're at. And now we played it last week, that Easy Band that I was just TikToking one day and found the Easy Band. They're out of Houston, and they kind of started taking pop songs and retranslating them, right, with the same feeling, but with the accordion, norteño style. So, like, it's been evolving. It's been constantly evolving, and I love to see it. And it kind of didn't hit me until we went into the pandemic, and we started playing all these old videos. And they used to always joke with me like, "Oh, did you direct this?" And I'd be like, "Yes." And it was like a 20-year-old video, and I just saw the things change. And that's what I've liked. Well, the second part of the question? I'm sorry, I apologize.
Wanting to know how it is that you've been able to help your own language, evolve your own knowledge of the industry and through the language.
Right. Music is basically music to all people, I feel. Like it has its own little roots, and it's expanded itself, and the sounds have expanded, and the people, but it's all connected still, I feel. So it's almost like it's the same vibe where you just kind of, a song has a certain set of rules almost, if it's good. Sometimes they don't, and that's interesting, you know, but mostly they have a set of rules. So it's like, you know, intro, like chorus, maybe a bridge, chorus, and you just kind of get to know where, okay, this guy's gonna hit his accordion riff, which I always like to joke with everybody, because like in heavy metal music, when you really hit that guitar, they call it the face melter. And some of these accordion guys can hit some face melters. So I was like, oh, here comes the face melter, guys. Concentrate on the accordion. And they get the shot and they knock it out. You know, even that whole thing is just, the whole concept of directing is, if I were sitting in an audience, where would I set my focus and attention? You know? I'm not gonna be looking off at like somebody sitting in the background just hitting a tambourine, and that's their going for it. I'd focus on the guy that's just going after it on his accordion. And that's where the music just kind of has the same feel everywhere.
And that's why we're lucky to have you. You've been part of Domingo Live for so many years. You know, I know that Rudy and I can relate so well. Monique, anybody that's in music, being in radio for so long, coming from a family in music, hearing you talk about all that, I just can relate completely, 100% to everything you said. And that's what we're hoping that they do with people that watch, you know?
Exactly. And therein brings our question here about language and its importance, whether it be a traditional Spanish, all Spanish language song like Vicente Fernandez or Pedro Infante. Now we have the Controls, we have the Fronteras, we have the Michael Salgados, we have Bobby Pulidos, we have Elida Reina.
Yeah, I love what Bad Bunny has done for just overall the average person.
Exactly.
Because I enjoy translating for my wife what he's saying, and she's like, "Really?" I was like, yeah, you just talking about a girl in every town, man.
That's what it is.
But the beat is universal.
Sure, the beat is universal, and it's brilliant, Dr. Barbosa, that we're using this language to transition and evolve the Tejano music industry, the Tejano culture, to a newer, perhaps even broader audience, because language is not, as you say, the barrier.
Oh, no, not at all. Language is not a barrier. And we see that the intersection of these cultures that we have here, they do have an influence on language. And then, of course, it's people will have a different way to represent their identity. And their identity is not monolingual. And we should not expect bilingual people to act as monolingual. Their culture is richer, we have to admit it, right? And they have a more global, a different way to see the world. That's why when you were asking about why should people learn Spanish, why are people who are not Hispanic looking for having their kids to learn Spanish? Because they know how important it is to have a global view, because then you can function in so many contexts, right? You have no problem to adapt, you have no problem to respect and understand other people, and people do realize that. So we who are supposed to be bilingual, we should realize that too, and we should take advantage of that.
I know something that triggered me when you said Vicente Fernandez. I automatically remember when George Strait, he was huge Vicente Fernandez fan, and he recorded El Rey in Spanish. We played it on KCB radio when I was in KCB, and I said, if George Strait could do that, I mean, love the language, love the music, respect one of our artists the way he does. Oh.
Well, Vicente was a collaborator. He also did a duet with Tony Bennett.
That's right.
So his reach out to the industry may have or may not have, but been part of the ushering in of collaborations between the different generations, the different genres, and we hope that through that collaboration we can see understanding and opening of minds when it comes to accepting our language as it is. Tex-Mex, Pocho, whatever you want to call it, it's who we are and how we celebrate National Hispanic Heritage Month.
And let's embrace it.
I want to thank you all for being with us today.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I would also like, if I can add, I am part of the Coastal Bend Association of Bilingual Education, and we are a newly formed nonprofit organization. We have retired teachers, professors, retired professors, specialists, and we are a group that here in Coastal Bend that would like to support bilingual families, just for ideas and any type of support.
You need to come on Domingo Live.
Thank you. And I believe we're going to kick off Heritage Month with the Pachanga at the Garcia Arts Center, so we're going to be there volunteering as well.
We hope to see you then, and thank you all for being with us today.
So much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
And thank you for watching.